started. Good afternoon. This is the regular Community Development Committee meeting for the Metropolitan Council. I'm the Chair, Robert Lilligren. It's Monday, June 7th. And just before calling the meeting to order, I want to acknowledge that we're still under a peacetime emergency as declared by Governor Walz due to COVID-19. And the Metropolitan Council has determined it's not practical nor prudent to conduct in-person committee meetings. And so we will conduct this meeting by electronic means under Minnesota Statute Section 13D 021. It'll be conducted by WebEx. It's going to be recorded. Members of the public will be able to monitor this meeting by going to the agenda online to view the live stream of the meeting. And the video is embedded right at the website. And I'll just remind committee members that if we should only use the chat chat feature on WebEx if we have technical sorts of things to discuss. And that should speak out loud so that members of the may not be watching and there's no questions on that. I will move into the agenda.
Mr. Chair?
And, yeah, Councilmember Johnson.
So sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. We are having a hard time hearing you.
Chair Lilligren, now you're muted. So press unmute and then maybe just speak a little louder.
I'm going to turn off my
Okay.
headset.
Now we can hear you.
That's good.
Oh, you can hear us?
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Then I'll leave it on. I prefer using it. All right, cool. So do I need to repeat what I just said, or do you think you got the gist?
I believe we're good.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. So thanks everyone for your patience, and I'm really looking forward to today's agenda. The information item, we're going to have some community input and some discussion on the project-based voucher program as we committed to at the last meeting. So really looking forward to that. And the first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda, and that's posted at the Met Council's website. And committee members, if there are no objections or changes, we can move directly into our business.
Excuse me, Chair Lilligren. I'd like to do a call of order, please. And I'll do a roll call.
Thank
Call to order,
you.
and I'll do the roll call.
All right, it's like amateur hour here today. My apologies.
Oh, no, we could blame it on the heat.
Michelle will do a roll call to establish quorum. Michelle, please.
Okay, and like I said, I received an advance notice that Council Member Wolf will not be in attendance today. So I'll start with Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Musset.
Here.
Bento. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We do have a quorum and can proceed with our agenda. And I'll try to get my head in the game here. The first item is our agenda. You can see the agenda posted at the Met Council website. And committee members, if you have no objections or changes, we can move on to our business. Any objections or changes? Hearing none, we will move on to the approval of the minutes from the May 17th regular Community Development Committee meeting. And is there a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second by Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, council members. And any discussion, additions, corrections, discussion? Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the approval of the minutes.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musset.
Aye.
Bento. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion is adopted. We'll move on to the consent agenda. These are routine or non-controversial items. And I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
Cummings moves approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank
Lindstrom.
you. Thank you, Lindstrom. Councilmember Lindstrom. And is there any discussion? Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the consent agenda.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. I'm going to start with Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. The consent agenda is adopted, and we'll move on to our non-consent business items. And the first is 2021-141. It's a Livable Communities Demonstration Account Pre-Development Funding Recommendations. And Ms. Hannah Gary is here to present. Ms. Gary, welcome.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. I am Hannah Gary. I'm a senior planner with the Livable Communities Act, and I am here to present the 2021 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Pre-Development Grant Funding Recommendations. Next slide, please. The Livable Communities Demonstration Account funds projects that create more housing choice, support living wage job creation, and connect jobs, housing, and regional amenities in an efficient and effective way. Next slide, please. Oh, previous slide. Thank you. The fund distribution plan, which was adopted in February of 2021, allocated $1 million to the LCDA pre-development program. 500,000 of that is available to distribute in each of the 2 rounds of funding. Next slide. 5 development applications came in for the first round of pre-development funding. Applications are reviewed by a team of council staff, and those applications are scored on how well the project outcomes meet LCA goals, how well the requested activities will help the projects achieve their outcomes, the project process, which includes community engagement, and the makeup and capacity of the project team. Applications must score a minimum of 30 points out of 45 to be eligible for funding. Next slide. The funding recommendation before you today is to award 3 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants totaling $275,000, and to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Next slide. This is the breakdown of all submitted projects. The project from St. Paul scored the highest with 44 of 45 possible points. There is $225,000 remaining. This remaining funding will be allocated to the next round of pre-development funding in August. 2 projects, one from the city of South St. Paul and one from the city of Minneapolis, did not meet the minimum score to be eligible for funding. Next slide. I'll now give a brief overview of the projects being recommended for funding. In partnership with Reconnect Rondo, this project is looking to target the revenues from development on the land bridge to fund anti-displacement measures, a community reinvestment fund, and to create a Rondo Community Investment Trust. The land bridge is anticipating to bring over 450 new housing units, office and retail space, and create almost $4 million in tax revenues. This project is seeking to mitigate potential displacement as a result of that new development and build community wealth in the surrounding neighborhood. Pre-development funds will support developing a right of return framework, researching a community investment trust, and researching implementation of various anti-displacement tools, including residential and commercial approaches. Staff are recommending funding the full request of $150,000. Next slide. In Brooklyn Park, the Innovation Hub would create a multi-use space to serve as a business incubator for local small businesses, as well as hosting an aquaponics center and gathering space for local small businesses. The project is being done in partnership with New Africa Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit that serves marginalized communities throughout the region. The goals for the project are to create up to 150 jobs, provide locally grown and raised food, work with local universities on advancing indoor aquaculture, educate the community on environmentally sustainable practices, and provide opportunities for real community ownership through credit counseling. The pre-development award would support design workshops and community engagement, site plan development, developing and operating pro forma, and soil testing. Staff are recommending funding the full request amount of $50,000. Next slide, please. The final project being recommended for funding is located in Minneapolis. Many properties were destroyed or damaged during the civil unrest that followed George Floyd's murder in May of 2020, including properties at the corner of Lake and Chicago. This project, a partnership between the Neighborhood Development Corporation, or NDC, and the City of Minneapolis, will redevelop a destroyed building into a mixed-use space with affordable housing, restaurant incubator space, and a space for NDC programming like training and technical assistance for local entrepreneurs. The pre-development award will support site plan development, pro forma creation, stormwater management planning, and community engagement. Staff is recommending funding the full request of $75,000. Next slide, please. Again, the funding recommendation before you today is to award 3 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants totaling $275,000 and to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreement on behalf of the Council. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions. And representatives from the project teams are also available to answer any specific questions about the projects being recommended for funding.
Thank you, Ms. Gary, for the report, and thank you also to you and to the team for your work on this. And I would note that that a couple of things. One, Mr. Matthew Ramadan put in the chat a comment about the Brooklyn Park Innovation Hub, a project that he unsuccessfully tried to bring to the North Minneapolis Upper Harbor Terminal. And then also that Councilmember Vento was having trouble logging on, and she did email me and Michelle and Director Barajas and said that she was voting yes on those earlier motions. She was watching through YouTube or through the link. So now we are all here. Welcome Councilmember Vento. And if I could ask folks to please mute if they're not.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Yeah, folks could please mute if you're not talking.
No, I was just saying that I couldn't hear.
Can folks hear me?
Okay, let's do an audio check.
Okay,
Name it.
how's
This is
that?
Michelle.
Can you?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you, Robert.
Okay, all right, yeah. I'm gonna go without my headset. I'm alone in the house now, so it's not gonna drive other people crazy. And as I told you before, my computer has a rough relationship with WebEx for some reason. It's riddled with technology issues. Great, so we will go on. My apologies there. Any questions of Ms. Gary or staff on that report? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gary, I'm wondering if you can, I'm excited about the 3 proposals that we're considering, and I'm wondering if you can talk about the 2 that are not getting funding. If you can expand a little bit on maybe what made their point scores so low, and then what does staff do in communication with those applicants to encourage them to apply again, and what they might need to do to improve for the next round of funding. Can you go into that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Cummings. I have spoken with both of the project teams about their applications and what they could improve going forward, and have encouraged both of those teams to reapply. we can start with the project in South St. Paul. That project was very strong in many ways, but one area that they definitely had room for improvement was in their community engagement. They didn't have a very robust community engagement plan, and we're not looking at significant partnerships for the project. And that's one thing that we emphasize through this program is having a strong community engagement process and partnering to improve the quality of the development. So we discussed that, and we also discussed just general challenges of projects coming in that we're not planning to have affordable housing. This project did not have any measures in place to ensure that there would be affordable housing in the new development. And that's just a challenge with the program, that we do place priority on bringing affordable housing in. The project in Minneapolis had some similar challenges. This project was very early on in the process and was looking at partnering a development consultant with a business owner. And the project team wasn't sure what the priorities for that development would be yet. And in discussions with the project team, we had some conversation about whether the particular project that came in might have been geared more towards a specific economic development goal, whereas livable communities is more geared towards a community development goal, looking at creating housing, increasing density, improving connections, creating new jobs. And so we have talked with both of those project teams about how they can improve their applications, and do hope to see both of those applications come in the next round.
Thank you. Councilmember Cummings, any
Just
further
a follow-up.
questions? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up comment. It's really helpful for me anyway to hear that, to hear about the criteria for those that perhaps didn't make this round and how you communicate with them, because it is a process, and it's really helpful for me to understand more fully how the grants are offered or not, and why not, and so I get a much fuller understanding of what we're doing. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. Yeah, I too really like what is being presented for the 3 projects in St. Paul, Brooklyn Park, and City of Minneapolis. I'm also very happy that our criteria for livable community grants is doing what it's supposed to be doing in terms of equity and reinvesting in neighborhoods, because we know that historically, money that was meant for reinvestment, redevelopment for communities was utilized by organizations and cities that did not have as great a redevelopment need. So it's nice that we're requiring the type of engagement, we're requiring the type of affordable housing and partnerships that are going to lead to more equity in our neighborhoods.
Thank you, Councilmember, for that comment. Further questions or comments about the staff report? Committee members, further questions? If not, Ms. Gary did make a proposed action that the Metropolitan Council award 3 livable communities demonstration account pre-development grants totaling $275,000 as shown in the table in the staff report to the City of St. Paul, to Brooklyn Park EDA, and to the City of Minneapolis, and also to authorize the Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on our behalf. Is there a motion to approve, please?
Bento moves approval.
Thank you, Councilmember Bento. Is there a second?
Muse.
Thank you, Councilmember Muse, for the second. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. I'm sorry, Judy, did you just raise your hand and I missed it? No? Okay, cool. Seeing no discussion, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Mousse,
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion is adopted, and we'll move on to our second non-consent business item. It's item 2021-142. It's the Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Pre-Development Funding Recommendations, and Stephen Klimick is here to present. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Stephen Klimek. I am a senior planner with the Livable Communities Act, here to present the Round 1 2021 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development, or LCDA TOD, Pre-Development Grant Funding Recommendations. Next slide, please. Livable Communities Demonstration Account funds projects that create more housing choice, support living wage job creation, and connect jobs, housing, and regional amenities in an efficient and effective way. Within that program, the LCDA TOD grants promote moderate to high density development projects that are located within walking distance of a major transit stop and typically include a mix of uses. Next slide, please. The fund distribution plan adopted in February of 2021 allocated $1 million to the LCDA TOD pre-development program. $500,000 is available to distribute in each of the 2 rounds of funding. Next slide, please. 3 LCDA TOD pre-development applications were received in round 1 of our pre-development funding. Applications were reviewed by a team of council staff. Applications were scored in 4 categories: how well project outcomes meet LCA goals, how well the requested activities will help the project achieve their outcomes, the project process, which includes community engagement, and the makeup and the capacity of the project teams. Applicants must score a minimum of 30 points out of the 45 available to be eligible for funding. Next slide, please. The scoring process has yielded a staff recommendation that the Metropolitan Council award 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Pre-Development Grants for $202,500 and authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Next slide, please. Given that recommendation, this table is a summary of all received projects and the recommended projects. The projects submitted by the City of Minneapolis and the City of St. Paul scored 71.75 points and 40 points respectively out of the 45 points available. There's $500,000 available for round 1, and after the recommended award amount of $202,500, there's $297,500 remaining. This remaining funding will be allocated to round 2 of the LCDA TOD pre-development funding this fall, and any remaining funding from that round will be allocated to the LCDA TOD development program later this year. The project submitted by the City of Bloomington did not meet the minimum score of 30 points to be eligible for funding. Staff has shared initial feedback and has encouraged the city to resubmit a revised application for the second round of funding this July. With that, I will now share more details on the 2 recommended projects. Next slide, please. Thank you. The City of Minneapolis application is for the 3030 Nicollet Avenue project. The requested and recommended award is $150,000. 3030 Nicollet seeks to transform the former Wells Fargo site on the Lake Street and Nicollet Avenue into a sustainable mixed-use redevelopment near the Orange Line BRT. The future redevelopment intends to include a new Wells Fargo branch built to LEED standards and 100 units of affordable housing, as well as affordable commercial space for community-based businesses and organizations. Future phases will be informed by the proposed engagement activities, but plan to include an additional 100 units of affordable housing. The project's engagement and public realm planning is also being coordinated with the adjacent Kmart redevelopment site, which received an LCDA TOD pre-development award in fall of 2020. Grant award uses include community engagement, stormwater management planning, site planning, phasing, and public realm plans. And again, the staff is recommending awarding the full request of $150,000. Next slide, please. The City of St. Paul application is for the 990 Payne Avenue project. The requested and recommended award is $52,500. 990 Payne Avenue is the redevelopment of a neighborhood commercial space along the Rush Line BRT and high-frequency bus route into a small food and retail business entrepreneurship center by the Latino Economic Development Center. The project aims to create 40 new jobs by incubating new local BIPOC-owned businesses that employ unemployed and underemployed neighborhood residents. Grant award uses include a financial feasibility for small food vendors with supporting market studies for a commissary kitchen and a meeting and event center, as well as a financial feasibility study for the real estate development and management of the overall project. Staff is recommending awarding the full request of $52,500. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the funding recommendation before you today is that the Metropolitan Council award 2 Louisville Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Pre-Development Grants totaling $202,500 and authorizes Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Thank you, and with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Representatives of the project teams are also in attendance and available for any detailed questions.
Thank you, Mr. Klimek, for that report, and to you and your team for your work. And are there any questions or comments for staff from committee members? And I can't see any of you right now, so please speak up.
Councilmember Lee has a question.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Clement. My quick question is, I was surprised to only see 3 projects apply for this TOD project grant, and I was wondering, is that a number we usually get each year?
Mr. Chair, Committee Lee, we have seen in the past around 2 to 3 pre-development applications for the TOD program. In each of the rounds, we have increased the amount of funding available and have been encouraging more applications, so we're hopeful to see more in this next round.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councilmember Cummings. You're muted, Councilmember.
Ta-da. One of these days. Okay, I just wanted to ask you as a little follow-up to Mr. Lee's question. What have we found is the reasons for so few applications for this money? Do you have any sense of why there are so few?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Cummings, that's a great question. I think we're also asking ourselves that question on the team. We're coming up with some ideas and options about trying to illustrate more of what cities and development teams can do with pre-development funding. And we hosted some new technical assistance this spring to kind of encourage and reveal that. I think there's a lot of changes we've made to the program this year, and so there are new things and expanded opportunities for what people can do. And I think we're trying to get the word out more of what those are to encourage more applications.
Thank you. Councilmember Cummings, anything else? Anything further? Other discussion, questions on that report? Any discussions? If not, Mr. Klimek proposes that we take the following action to award the 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Pre-Development Grants totaling $202,500, and also to authorize the Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on our behalf. Is there a motion to approve, please?
Moved by Lee.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee moved it, and Councilmember Cummings, was that you?
Actually, that was Councilmember Chambliss.
Councilmember Chambliss, thank you. Seconds. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion carries and that is adopted. And we'll move on to our next non-consent business item. It's 2021-126. It's the Gale Woods Farm Special Recreation Feature Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund from the Three Rivers Park District. And Ms. Jessica Lee is here to present. Ms. Lee, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Good afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Lee. I'm a senior park planner, and I'm here to present business item 2021-126, Gale Woods Farm Special Recreation Feature Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund for the Olson property for Three Rivers Park District. Next slide, please. Gilwood's Farm Special Recreation Feature is located in the western part of Hennepin County in Minnetrista. Our regional park system has 8 special recreation features, which are defined as regional opportunities not generally found in the regional parks, park reserves, or trail corridors. They must provide a natural resource-based and scenic setting that offers a compelling sense of place and provides a unique outdoor recreation experience. Next slide, please. Gilwood's Farm is indeed a unique, one-of-a-kind regional natural resources and outdoor recreation opportunity. Gilwood's offers visitors the chance to see a real working farm up close. The farm operates a community-supported agriculture program and works closely with community partners to engage youth in sustainable agriculture, food production, animal care, and creating connections to nature. The park is a beautiful mix of pastures and gardens and is managed for both food production and high-quality natural resources habitat. This 400-acre farm was gifted to Three Rivers Park District 20 years ago, and it is a true regional park system treasure. Next slide, please. A boundary adjustment was approved a couple months ago to add the subject property outlined here in red. This parcel will add approximately 28 acres of high-quality natural resources to the park. It is heavily wooded with small pockets of wetlands and lies adjacent to the Dakota Rail Regional Trail. There are no structures on the property, so stewardship costs are minimal. Next slide, please. The land was appraised at $595,000, and the landowner has agreed to that amount. The total acquisition cost is $612,500. The grant amount of $459,375 will be funded through the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund acquisition account, and Three Rivers will provide the required 25% local match. Next slide, please. Our rationale for recommendation is that this acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund appropriation requirements, the Gilwood's Farm Special Recreation Feature Master Plan, and Three Rivers Park District is within their $1.7 million per fiscal year limit for the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund. Next slide, please. Our recommendations today are to approve a grant of up to $459,375 to Three Rivers Park District to acquire the vacant rural residential 27.87 acre Olson property adjacent to Gilwood's Farm, just west of Wood Edge Road in Minnetrista, for Gilwood's Farm Special Recreation Feature, and to authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restricted covenant on behalf of the Council. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. for your work on this. And any questions on the report, committee members? Questions?
Councilmember Vento has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Bento.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I've not been to this regional park, but I'm going this summer now that we're beyond all of the, most of the restrictions. And I just want to commend the staff as well as the folks working with Gale Woods. This just sounds like such a phenomenal park and provides so many opportunities. And I just really hope that people in the region take advantage of it. It's just tremendous. And I can't say enough how impressed I am with the work everyone has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further comments or questions on the report? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Lee has proposed the action that we approve a grant from the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund of up to $459,375 to acquire the vacant land and also to authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement. Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Vento, did you want to move to approve this?
I was waiting for Councilmember Johnson, but I'll go ahead. Yes.
All right, Councilmember Johnson.
I'll move it.
Okay, and Councilmember Vento second.
I'll second it. I thought maybe it was in your turf, Councilmember Johnson, but I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musset,
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion is adopted. And we will move on to our next non-consent business item. It's item 2021-140. This is the same week item. It's the Groveland Village Comprehensive Plan Amendment for the City of Blaine. And Mr. Wycheck is here to present. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair and Council members. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. I have to warn you, I think you all know that I have a small grumpy dachshund, so he could be set off at any moment.
Thank you for the warning, Mr. Wycheck.
Yes. As you know, my name is Eric Wycheck. I'm a planning analyst in the local planning assistance work unit within community development, and I'm here to discuss with you the Groveland Village Comprehensive Plan Amendment for the City of Blaine. Next slide, please. As shown in Figure 2 of the staff report, Thrive MSP 2040 gives the City of Blaine a community designation of suburban edge. The area affected by the amendment is shown in red in the southern portion of the city. And you'll see if you know this area of the region, you'll see that it's quite close to the airport. And we'll kind of get into that more with the next slide. Next slide, please. As shown in Figure 1 of the staff report, this map shows the regional systems in relation to the amendment site. The proposed amendment conforms to the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan. The nearest unit of the Regional Parks system is the Rice Creek North Regional Trail, which is approximately 1.8 miles southeast of the proposed land use change over in the city of Shoreview. The wastewater system has capacity to accommodate this development. And I'd like to draw your attention to the transportation system comments on page 4 and page 5 of the committee report. While the proposed amendment does conform to the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan, the Metropolitan Airports Commission issued some concerns regarding noise impacts given the proximity of this residential development near the Anoka County Blaine Airport. And those that the advisory comments within the recommended actions and on page 4 address some of these concerns by the Metropolitan Airports Commission. Next slide, please. The amendment re-guides 27 acres of planned commercial, planned industrial land to 8 acres of high density residential and 19 acres of medium density residential. The amendment site is located adjacent to Highway 10 at the northwest corner of 93rd Lane and County Road J. And the purpose of the amendment is to accommodate a development that will consist of 106 townhomes and 152 apartment units. Next slide, please. As shown on Figure 3 of your staff report, the current planned land use for this amendment site is planned commercial, planned industrial. That's that hatched area just southwest of the airport. Next slide, please. As shown in Figure 4 of your staff report, the proposed land use guiding for the amendment site is high density residential and medium density residential. And that high density residential you can see is located on the southern or southeastern portion of the site. Next slide, please. Table 1 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned density for the city. The amendment does not impact the overall minimum density. It's also worth mentioning that while medium and high density residential land uses could potentially contribute to the city's affordable housing need, this proposed development does not include any affordable units. Therefore, this project does not contribute to the amount of available acreage for affordable housing meeting that need number. So the need number and the acreage is unchanged for affordable housing. Next slide, please. So staff find that the proposed amendment conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. In this slide, the proposed action, it really brings forward those Metropolitan Airports Commission comments into advisory comments here that we would like the council to consider. So first of all, we would recommend that the council authorize the city of Blaine to place its comprehensive plan amendment into effect, find that the amendment does not change the city's forecasts, but due to the proximity of the Anoka Blaine Airport, we strongly encourage the city to consider suspending the development until updated noise contours are available and to analyze the impact of noise on the development. And secondly, to implement the notification requirements and noise mitigation standards if the city chooses to move forward with this development proposal. And then finally, advise the city to implement advisory comments in the review record for forecasts and natural resources. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wycheck. Any questions on that report, committee members? Questions? Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, or Lisa, or any of the staff, have there been other such changes and city efforts that have resulted in Airport Commission cautioning us on this type of direction? And if so, how does it affect finding developers and being able to grow the plan and go forward? I live in an area that deals with a non-airport related noise issue, and it's a constant source of frustration and comment, and I think it's going to continue to be one, and I think it's going to impact any future growth where I live. So I'm just wondering, how do cities react to that? And how do the private sector and communities react to that?
Mr. Wycheck.
Councilmember Vento, thank you for that question. I might defer that question to Community Development Director Barajas on the wider context. I'm quite happy to speak about this particular development, but she might have more to share on the broader context of Matt's comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Barajas. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, council members, I'm Lisa Barajas, Community Development Director. And we don't often see changes re-guiding to residential uses near the airports in the metro area, largely because it's not the most desirable place for residential development. But from time to time we do. I think in all my time at the council, there's been maybe 3 or 4 across the entire metro area that have come up like that. But in this case, and as Eric reviewed it, and in all of our reviews of those types of changes that are in close proximity to an airport, as we're really looking at the noise contours for the actual flight patterns. And while some of these may need to be updated, this is the source of Mac's comments on the current amendment. That's what our standard of review is. So while it might look proximate, I know our airports are largely trying to buy as much land as they can around them, so they don't have development up close to those runways, but in some of our more developed areas, there is that limitation. So we don't see this very often, but that's why we don't often see comments from MAC. I think the last time we saw this was actually for development in the Fort Snelling unorganized territory. On property that's owned by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and in an area over which we actually don't have comprehensive planning because it's all government-owned land. So very unusual housing development in that area. So that's probably the closest one and the one that we had the most consternation about because of proximity, but otherwise we don't often see these.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barajas, Councilmember Vento. Further discussion or questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the city's approvals of this, are they requiring the developer to notify residents of the proximity and the noise? I know during my time on the Plymouth City Council, we had development that started to encroach around a gun range. And so we knew that there would be noise complaints if it wasn't noticed, and the types of materials to help buffer the noise to the inside of the units wasn't taken care of. So that was actually built into our approvals, so that at the time of sale and resale, we had notification built in. So I don't know, if that's the case here, and I'm not trying to dig deep into it, but that was one of the ways we tried to mitigate sound complaints when we knew that they were likely to happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I think I can address that point, which is a good question. I know that the city is working very closely with the developer on this project, and the developer is required through development agreement to include language in the lease noting that the property is within an aviation easement, and the development agreement obligates the developer to disclose the proximity to the airport and the existing aviation easement. So I do think there are some mitigation measures being put in place through landscaping as well, and also building materials. So that is being required by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wojcik. Councilmember Johnson, anything further? Great, thanks. Further questions on this report from committee members? Any further questions? Hearing none, Mr. Wojcik has proposed a series of actions for the city of Blaine to place its Groveland Village Comprehensive Plan Amendment into effect. Is there a motion to approve, please?
Lindstrom moves to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second? A second on that motion.
Johnson seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. And it looks like Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen has joined us. Welcome, Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Any discussion on that motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion carries, and we will move on to our final non-consent business item for today before moving on to our information item. That's item 2021-131. It's approval of the amended Edina Affordable Housing Partnership. We've had some discussion on this in the past as well, and so I'll look to Ms. Terry Smith to present. Ms. Smith, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Terry Smith, and I'm the Director of the Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority. You are accurate, Mr. Chair. This will be the third time you've heard something on this item. We had an information item last September, then we had an action item in December, and today's item is a revision, an amendment to the partnership. So the action before you today is that you approve the amended Edina Affordable Housing Partnership as described in the business item, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the loan agreements and other necessary agreements with the city, as well as the purchase agreements to actually purchase the homes. Initially in December, the business item and that the council approved was that the city of Edina committed $2 million to purchase homes within the city and then lease them to the council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority for $1. And then the Metro HRA, through its Family Affordable Housing Program, would operate those units in conjunction with an existing property management contract. After further discussion with the city is now proposing that instead of leasing the units to the HRA for $1, that the HRA and the city enter into a $2 million 25-year forgivable loan agreement to purchase the home. So instead of the city purchasing the homes, the HRA, in consultation and in partnership with the city, will purchase the homes. The council will be the owner and operator of those units going forward. And we've been working with our legal team as well as the council's real estate office to review the agreements and put necessary agreements into place. The units that loan term will be a 0 interest, 25-year forgivable loan with a commitment that the units remain affordable housing. The city approved the amended partnership at their May 27th meeting. And so if you all approve this today, it'll go to council approval on June 23rd. And then we can start purchasing units on the open housing market and lease them to low-income families. The goal of the partnership is to acquire 4 to 5 single-family homes. And you all know what the housing market is doing right now. So we have been in conversations with the city and recognizing the challenges that we might encounter in trying to purchase units. And so just knowing that it might take us a little bit longer than initially anticipated, just due to the high cost of housing. But it still remains a great partnership and a creative opportunity. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that report, Ms. Smith, and for your work on this and for your flexibility and adaptability. This is kind of a different way of doing business for us, right? So I commend you and your team. Questions or discussion on that report, Councilmember Cummings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, Terry, I think this is such a great program, and as I've said before, and I think we've talked about before, hopefully it'll serve as some type of a model with other communities that have this opportunity. But I'm curious about why the change in terms, and why does the city not want to own and lease and then we get them? So what's behind that?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Cummings, they just didn't have the infrastructure in place in developing, leasing the houses to the council for $1 became a more complicated process. And so after talking with our respective attorneys, determined that it would be a more efficient partnership to have them loan the money to us, and then we purchase the homes, of course, in conjunction with the city. So it was just about complication of the process.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you. Just a little follow-up. So the process will work, they help us identify the homes that might be appropriate, or we go out and find them and then we seek their approval of them, of purchasing those particular homes for this particular project? Or which is the chicken and which is the egg in this?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Cummings, those are the details that'll be worked out in the agreements, but the idea is the council will work with its real estate division in purchasing the homes. The City of Edina staff, Stephanie Hawkinson, who we've been working with, she's the affordable housing manager there, will also help identify homes. So at the point a home becomes available, either through that we find or that they find, we will look at it together, determine the rehabilitation needs, have an inspection done, and those sorts of things. And that will all flow through our property management company. But the council's real estate office will actually help us purchase the homes.
Thank you. Councilmember Cummings, anything further? Further discussion, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Terry, can you share with us then the maintenance costs once the asset is purchased? There, could be, as you just mentioned, some rehabilitation. But what about the long-term maintenance costs? Was that originally going to be with the city, but then in this change, it'll be with us, or is that going to be something that we share in the future? That's my first question. Then I have a second follow-up question.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, that was always part of the partnership, that the rental income that's generated from the property would pay for the maintenance and upkeep of the units. And we were always intending to flow that through the property management company with all expenditures approved by the council.
Thank you, Terry. And Mr. Chair, one more question for you, Terry. This is awesome. So thank you so much. And then is there, with the, threat of evictions out there and foreclosures, is there a chance that there could be families in homes that are, under threat of foreclosure because of the last year's circumstances, that this might be an opportunity to help people stay in their home rather than lose their home and have it hit the market and potentially be one of the homes that we pick up then to try to put a family in for affordable housing? I don't know if that's an option, but there's just that wave that we're very nervous about right now.
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, there's an in-place for families that are in place in the project-based voucher regulations that allows in-place families to remain. So certainly if we could purchase a foreclosure property and help a family remain in place, we could certainly do that. I think it's about being creative and finding homes before they hit the market because they're getting snapped up so quickly. And so it's about identifying homes early, but that's certainly a possibility.
Councilmember Johnson, anything further? Okay, further questions or discussion on this report, Councilmember Chambliss.
Just curious about the last statement in terms of identifying homes early. I know there are people who have some type of public support for housing and maybe working with an agency to be able to stay in their homes if they know they've been having trouble paying their mortgage. Is that one of the partnerships that we have, or could we seek that out?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Chambliss, the city reached out to all homeowners within the city that have 2 and 3 bedroom units that have a, I don't know if it was the tax assessed market value within our price range, to let them know that the city is looking for properties in that price range to purchase, and if they're interested to contact the city. I think they have, somewhere between 10 and 15 responses from homeowners who may have an interest in selling. So that's one of the things they've done. But I think establishing as many partnerships as we can to identify potentially available homes, it would be a helpful thing to do.
Chair, if I may.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just ask a follow-up question. I know that a lot of times when people get a letter in the mail, sometimes it's very technical or intimidating. So that's where I think the partnerships can be very helpful to maybe even do some outreach saying, hey, you know, you have received a letter and you know, what are the possibilities of, you know, not being on the street or not losing your home, and here's some things that you can look into. But, you know, just a suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Chambliss. Good point. And we will look into some of those things.
Thank you, Councilmember Chambliss. Ms. Smith. Further questions on this report? Any further questions? Hearing none, Ms. Smith has proposed a series of actions to approve the amended Edina Affordable Housing Partnership. Is there a motion to approve, please?
Cummings moves approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second, Atlas Ingebretson.
Thank you, Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and the motion is adopted. And we've finished our business items for the evening, so we will move on to our information item, which is returning to the discussion of the project-based voucher program offer and award discussion. And committee members, we've heard this item originally in March when staff came to us for direction on implementing the adopted 2021 administrative plan as it relates to the project-based vouchers, or the PBVs. At our last committee meeting in May, members requested an additional forum to hear from interested parties on the project-based voucher program. So first we'll hear from Director Terry Smith of the Metro HRA. She'll review the PBV program and how it fits within our overall Housing Choice Voucher program. And then after Terry's presentation, I'll be happy to call on interested parties that have signed up to speak on this issue. I have a list of about 5 or 6. then certainly ask others who maybe didn't have the opportunity that want to speak. And while this is not a public hearing for our 2021 plan, this will give us an opportunity to consider these comments as part of the development of the 2022 plan that is currently underway. So first we will hear, if there's no questions from committee members before we get started, I want to thank my colleagues, especially Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Bento, who helped kind of shape this evening's conversation. And it's an honor to work with you. And I'll turn to Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for having me this evening. Again, I'm Terry Smith. I'm the Director of the Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I have a handful of slides for you this evening that I'll share to sort of reground us on where we're at with the offer and award of project-based vouchers. And as Council Member Lilligren said, I brought a similar item to the Community Development Committee on March 1st, really to receive direction from the CDC members on the staff recommendation to forego offering project-based vouchers, at least for 2021, to allow us to focus on other work plan items. So with that, I'll start with my slides. Next slide, please, Greg. Thank you. So the Metro HRA has 6,872 housing choice vouchers known as Section 8. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development allows Housing Authority discretion to project base up to 20% of those vouchers. And under certain circumstances, the federal regulations have been changed in recent years to allow even 30% as PBVs for certain developments that have supportive services and serve specialized populations such as people experiencing homelessness. The current approval in the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan is that the Metro HRA will project base up to 20% of its vouchers. We currently have 970 project-based vouchers awarded in 55 separate projects and 33 different communities throughout the region. 37 of those have supportive service components, serving specialized populations such as people living with disabilities, people experiencing homelessness, veterans that are experiencing homelessness, etc. For those 37 developments, the units for those are filled through either coordinated entry, which is a coordinated referral process for services and housing for people experiencing homelessness and disabilities across the region. 18 of these 55 developments are general occupancy, and those are generally filled with applicants from the general broader Section 8 waiting list. The pie chart on the right shows that currently we have 970 units that are project-based, and that gray pie piece there shows that we have 404 project-based vouchers under current policy that we could attach to projects within the region. I also think it's important to say that those 404 units are under contract, so all vouchers are in use at this point. It just would mean we would shift some of them from the Housing Choice Voucher to the project-based voucher program. Next slide, please. So under our current administrative plan policy for the project-based voucher program, we have a chapter in our administrative plan that covers project-based vouchers. That policy currently states that the Metro HRA will operate a project-based voucher program using, again, up to 20% of its authorized units for project-based assistance. In the PHA, that's what it's called in the document, but Metro HRA will offer and award project-based vouchers in the following ways, and then it lists 2 ways. One is we can advertise the availability of PBVs through our own request for proposals process. And the second way that we have listed in our administrative plan is that we advertise the availability of units in conjunction with Minnesota Housing's annual request for proposals process, a process by which developers can come in to the Minnesota Finance Agency and apply for a variety of public financing for affordable housing development. Next slide, please. So as we consider, and these were some of the things that were shared with you on March 1st, but as we consider whether or not to offer project-based vouchers in a given year, we look at many variables. The project-based vouchers come from a very limited pool of turnover vouchers. And so when we're looking at whether or not to offer in a given year, we're looking at overall voucher utilization. So of our total pool of vouchers, 6,800 and some 6,900, how many are in use? And the answer to that is they're almost all, well, they are all in use all the time. We don't have any vouchers just sitting on the shelf. current voucher turnover rates, so how many vouchers turn over in a given year or a given month and need to be refilled. And I'll get into some of that detail in a few slides. Our funding and budget. So what does our HUD budget look like for the year and how much of our budget was utilized the previous year? And then we also, an important consideration is trying to balance those limited turnover vouchers for a variety of purposes, including use for initially filling project-based buildings, PBV turnovers when a tenant moves, and then general waiting list admissions. I think it's also important to point out that PBVs require a lot of staffing capacity to bring projects on, and these are some of the things that are required to be done. And I think also important to point out, we do not get paid any additional money from HUD to bring these projects on, and these are things that are required in addition to the regular housing choice voucher program. So on top of the work that staff are already doing, but we issue an RFP, we review applications, we do a formal award, which takes some time. PBV regulations require that we conduct an environmental review and a subsidy layering review to make sure there isn't duplicate public assistance. There are Davis-Bacon wage requirements for any project that contains over 9 project-based vouchers. And so that means we monitor wages to make sure the construction crew, for example, is paid wages that are consistent with the Davis-Bacon wage rates. But that includes a review of weekly payroll for the entire construction period. So it takes an incredible amount of time to do that. When we lease up a building, that takes a lot of staff capacity if we're reaching out to waiting list applicants. But if we're bringing on, for example, a 50-unit building, we're doing paperwork for 50 families to lease up the building. And then when current PBV occupants move, we have to issue move paperwork and vouchers, but then filling turnover units as the PBV units turn over. Next slide, please, Greg. So in 2020, and this is a repeat of what was talked about in March, but thought it was important to include tonight as a recap. But in 2020, we issued a request for proposals in May of 2020, offering up to 200 project-based vouchers. And when we say up to 200 project-based vouchers, we knew that, well, I'm going to go through the slides first, and then I'll give a couple caveats. The RFP required developers to obtain full financing in 2020 in order to be eligible for a formal award. 23 applicants requested a total of 321 PBV units. 13 applicants received letters of intent for a total of 196 PBV units. So in advance of Minnesota Housing's RFP process, we sent letters to these 13 applicants or developers saying, if you get all your funding, we'll give you the formal award of vouchers. 7 applicants received formal awards, at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, for a total of 85 PBV units. The RFP explicitly stated the highest scoring applications for up to 200 PBVs will proceed as follows. New construction projects will be provided with a letter of intent that commits project-based vouchers contingent on a project receiving the necessary funding in 2020 to become financially feasible. We knew going in that all the projects that were requesting project-based vouchers would not get full funding because of the limited tax credit financing that's available through the finance agencies. The RFP also stated that if a project does not receive the necessary funding in 2020, the project will not be awarded PBVs, and the project owner must reapply for PBVs at a later date when PBVs are again offered. That's a little tongue twister with a lot of abbreviations, but it's similar to a tax credit process. The tax credit process opens, applicants apply. Those that don't get funded need to come through the next, when the next tax credit application is offered an award, and that was sort of the same that happened here. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the PBV, the project-based vouchers that have been offered and awarded since 1993, so our entire PBV program. You'll see that on this chart. I think the important things to point out are some years we offer, some years we don't. In 2009, in 2015, and in 2018, the 3 highest years of PBV awards. Those were, for those units, we were awarded additional vouchers from HUD for special purposes. For example, in 2018, we had an opt-out. There was a project in Edina that opted out of a federal contract. So we got vouchers for that 100-unit building and gave them to the residents in place so they remained assisted. In 2009, 150 of those units were the Family Affordable Housing Program units. The council owned units, and we received 150 vouchers from HUD to make that happen. And then in 2015, we had 2 opt-out projects that were awarded in that year. So those were not coming from our pool of turnover vouchers. The 4th highest year of PBV awards was in 2020, where we ended up awarding 85 project-based vouchers, and 2 projects and 60 units were awarded to 1 developer, which was Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. And that's the most vouchers we've ever awarded to a given developer in a year. And so it was sort of an anomaly year as well. Next slide, please. PBV offer and award considerations. So as I indicated, the vouchers for project-based vouchers come from a very limited pool of turnover vouchers. We do not get extra vouchers from HUD when we shift them from the tenant-based to the project-based program, nor do we get any additional administrative fees for operating project-based vouchers. There are many housing authorities that operate project-based voucher programs and many that do not. It's a discretionary policy for policymakers like you. The Metro HRA again has about 750 vouchers turnover each year, so about 60 per month, and they need to serve a variety of purposes, and those are listed here. So waiting list applicants. The Metro HRA established a waiting list in 2019 of 2,000 applicants, and during that application opening process, we received 17,400 requests from individuals and families wanting to get on that waiting list. We were only able to place 2,000 on the waiting list because of the limited resources we have. Today, 1,900 of those remain. So 2 years later, 1,900 remain. And the 100 that are getting vouchers are just getting them now for the first time. So the applicants have been waiting a very long time. And when we opened our waiting list, important to point out that 15,400 applicants did not even get put on the list. So that just shows the tremendous demand for a housing choice voucher. And that's not unique to the Metro HRA, that's the same across the region, across the country. These limited turnover voucher also need to go to PBV unit movers. So the regulations require that after a person, individual or a family lives in a project-based unit for 12 months, they have the option of taking a tenant-based voucher to move to another home. So, and the regulations require that we serve these PBV unit movers before we serve the waiting list. And so those take a turnover voucher and then take another voucher to fill the unit. So they sort of carry a tail with them. We use turnover vouchers to initially fill PBV units. Each time a new PBV building is filled, it takes turnover vouchers. So for example, if we have a 50 unit building coming online next month, we have to take 50 of our turnover vouchers to put towards that building. And then the last one here can get kind of confusing, but it's absorbing vouchers from other housing authorities. So once a family has a voucher, they can move wherever they want across the country as long as there's a housing authority operating the program. So we get people moving to our service area from Minneapolis or from Plymouth or from Chicago or from Houston. And when that voucher arrives, that family arrives in our service area, we can decide to give them one of our own vouchers and absorb them into our own program, or we can bill that housing authority. So we're billing Houston or Minneapolis or Plymouth. Billing is extremely administratively burdensome, but absorbing takes vouchers. So there's a balance to that. To give you an idea of the volume, Metro HRA gets anywhere from 50 to 100 port-ins every single month. And so if we're billing for all of those build very quickly. It could get up to 800-900 in a year. Right now we have 700 poured in, so we're billing for 700 people that are living in our service area. Once it gets beyond about 450 or 500, it becomes almost well, it's extremely administratively burdensome, so we need to absorb some of those to reduce the billing capacity. Next slide, please. So here's a chart that shows how our turnover vouchers have been used in the last 2 years. So in 2019, we had total voucher turnovers of 654. 100, and then at the bottom, the dark blue is project-based vouchers. So 164 of those went to either project-based voucher movers or to initially fill project-based voucher units. The green chunk are called special purpose vouchers, and those are vouchers that are given to us from HUD to serve a special purpose, like serving homeless veterans, like serving people experiencing homelessness. And when those vouchers turn over, we need to use our partnerships to fill those so they do not come from the waiting list. Like the veterans vouchers come from direct referral from the Veterans Administration, for example. The medium blue there is waiting list admissions. So these are the number of families that have come off the waiting list to take one of these turnover vouchers. And important to point out that although 97 filled some of the turnover vouchers in 2019, and then the chart on the right shows 171 waiting list admissions, some of those are from the old waiting list. So we had to finish up the old waiting list. That was, by the way, 7-year waiting list. And so we're just finishing that up and just selected 100 from the new waiting list. And so many of those were from the old waiting list. And then the last chunk in the lightest blue are the number of vouchers that we absorbed. And those take turnover vouchers. And that's not how we want to use our turnover vouchers, but from an administrative capacity standpoint, we need to do that to balance the administrative functioning and operations of our work. Next slide, please. So this is just a recap of the discussion that happened at the March 1st meeting. I sort of went into some of that in the beginning, but really the recommendation from staff was to forego offering project-based vouchers in 2021 to allow us to focus staff capacity on waiting list admissions and other work plan items. I outlined the administrative capacity it takes to bring a project-based voucher development on, and that takes away from other work plan items. The work plan for 2021 will continue to include bringing projects on that are already in the pipeline. So we have 3 project-based voucher project awards from 2019 that are still not online yet, and we'll need to bring those online in 2021. The 7 projects that were awarded from 2020, including the 60 vouchers for Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative, we will be working with those to get the preliminary steps done. Subsidy layering review, environmental review. We've already reviewed the applications, but entering into preliminary agreements to hold the vouchers during the construction period, Davis-Bacon monitoring, and so on. So there is some administrative work to be done for existing projects. And the purpose of today is really for an opportunity for community input. It's a little bit different because, and it feels kind of different because if you ask the developer community, what should we do? Should we offer project-based vouchers this year or shouldn't we? They're all going to say, yes, yes, we should. Who's not here today and who we're not hearing from are the 1,900 people that are on the waiting list. And if we asked all of them, should we use all of our turnover vouchers for these project-based units or should we serve some for the waiting list? And they would all say, no, serve them to the waiting list. And so there's really the engagement that will occur in the coming months. So during June and July for our administrative plan process will be engagement with our primary customers, who are those housing choice voucher waiting list applicants. And so we'll be engaging with them on this topic, and we'll plan to collect comments and bring them back as part of the PHA plan process. Next slide, please. And this is my final slide, Mr. Chair. In terms of next steps and how this plays out in operations of our work unit is changes to the housing choice voucher administrative plan are generally made in conjunction with our public housing agency plan process. And that's an annual report that we send to HUD and address the public that shows what programs we're going to operate, how we're going to operate them. And then every single year we make some revisions to the administrative plan that is an attachment to that. So just to give you an idea, here's our administrative plan. It's very thick. So when we engage with our residents, if we're making some significant changes, those are the things that we will really dig in with them in a given year on, for example. But direction and discussion from today's meeting may be incorporated more formally into this plan. An example is we may include some more detail on variables that are considered when determining whether or not to offer and award project-based vouchers in a given year. So it's not realistic to say we're going to offer 100 vouchers every year on May 20th because our business changes from year to year, but I think putting some more guidance in there and adding some transparency so the development community will know that we're not necessarily offering those vouchers every single year. And the timeline is below. So on an ongoing basis, we're engaging with our stakeholders, which is really primarily the people that we serve, the voucher holders on our program. And we have, and we're continually making changes and edits to our administrative plan that generally get approved one time a year during this formal process. One of the consent items today was establishing a public hearing date for the Public Housing Agency plan. In June and July, we are hosting resident advisory board meetings, and those are meetings of actual voucher holders. Some are project-based voucher holders and some are housing choice voucher holders. And so we'll be meeting with them in the coming months, primarily on the implementation of small area fair market rents, some biennial inspection issues, and then we may have some discussion with them about this balance and struggle that we have with trying to balance all of our turnover vouchers and balancing who gets them really and where they go. And then we'll have our public hearing in August. Public hearing and comments will be open until the end of August. And based on any verbal or written comments that we receive, we will review our plan and make any recommend or revisions based on the comments we received. And then the plan will receive final approval by the CDC and council in September. And then it has to be submitted to HUD by the middle of October. So that's sort of the timeline here. And with that, Mr. Chair, those are my formal comments and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for that report. And before we turn to our guests for public comment, are there any questions or comments from committee members? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Terry, thank you so much for this presentation. Really helpful to have the overview again and to get your expertise behind all of the nuance that goes into a very complicated system as we're trying to help people. Really admire you and your team for all that they're doing. I was just wondering too, you know, when we first talked about bringing the project-based vouchers program up, forgive me, you know, with COVID, but so it was more than a year ago. And I think it was to try to help projects be able to say they have this in letter of intent or an offering from us so that they'd perhaps score better with Minnesota Housing rather than waiting for them to come out of Minnesota Housing like maybe we traditionally did and then work to assign vouchers that way. Am I understanding that right?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, yes. So for many years, we've offered through Minnesota Housing, and we had some discussion with the development community, not only Beacon, but several other developers. And frankly, for years, they had been requesting that we award them ahead of time. So then the developers can go into the tax credit process, first mortgage with additional points for agreeing to project base. And so we did make that switch last year. And last year was the first year that we offered and awarded in advance of Minnesota Housing for many years, aside from some special purpose vouchers that were offered. So we did that last year for the first time, correct?
And Mr. Chair, if I may just follow up, thank you. And so Terry, when we said up to 200, and I think if I recall in both of your presentations, you, but it reminded me in this one that we really knew that we wouldn't be allocating all 200 because they did have to get their funding by the end of the year, December 31st, 2020. But yet, what if they all did get their funding? I mean, you know, I'm trying to reconcile the expectation that maybe was set with 200, but the realization of how hard it would be to actually reach that number, because technically we did put 200 out there, but it came in at 85.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, you're right. I mean, if 200 would have come in, I mean, the way we wrote the proposal and the RFP, we would have awarded them. I think what's, if I've had lengthy discussions with our partners at Minnesota Housing about this as well, but for example, there's one developer that I won't name today, but that submitted 4 tax credit applications for 4 developments. It's not realistic for a developer to receive funding on 4 projects. It's just, there isn't enough funding, there aren't enough resources to go around for that. And so I know Minnesota Housing always recommends, instead of putting all 4 in, put your energy into your 2 best projects, and then you have a better chance of getting funded. But it's very, very unlikely. And I don't know if it's ever happened that one developer would get funding for 4 developments in one tax credit round.
Thank you. And again, just on the same line. So if we were to do this again, though, maybe that would be a point where we would, you know, look at the number that we put out there and maybe more clearly, not that we were not clear in our expectations, but just again, the reality, and developers know this too, but, you know, setting that expectation or talking maybe even more at the committee level, so I understand it, or committee members understand kind of, you know, the challenges that lie there within. And then am I hearing too in the presentation that you said that this is also a staff capacity issue just because of the burdensome nature of it, and that is really a factor because it really competes then with the time that's needed on other Section 8 voucher work?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, yes, it's some housing authorities, as I indicated, don't have a project-based voucher program because of that. It takes a lot of staff capacity to administer the program, and it's a real struggle for me because there are really good projects, and yes, we want to fund them all, and yes, we want to house everybody. That's what our mission is, right? But I feel like we have an obligation and a financial responsibility to the people that we serve to try and balance our resources across many, to serve as many families as possible in different capacities. But yes, you're right.
Thank you. And I just really appreciate that. And I, for one, and of course it's a full council and we're going to go through our budgets, but you know, with our priorities that we have set at the council and housing, affordable housing, you know, ending racism, closing the gaps is such a priority that, you know, I would like to understand better through budgeting, you know, if we can add resources. For me, I'd like to just know how we could add resources to help with this, since it's such a crisis situation, not only in our region, but across the country. And then Terry, I've asked you this before, but I think it's interesting for this discussion. So the feds just gave us a bunch more, maybe you need to fill in what a bunch more means, but a bunch more housing choice vouchers, but it's through coordinated entry, which also can be more difficult. But you mentioned in this presentation that the project-based vouchers are actually coordinated entry. So would it be helpful then with these new vouchers coming in for project-based vouchers, since they're coordinated entry, or can coordinated entry go to, you know, other apartments or units as well?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, and committee members, the coordinated entry system is a coordinated entry system for homeless assistance programs, for supports and housing. And each county or group of counties has their own coordinated entry system. But what we were doing is, for 33 of our 55 current project-based voucher developments serve specialized populations, people experiencing homelessness, homeless veterans, etc. And because, you know, although we reach out to our waiting list to see if they have the qualifications to move into those buildings, 99% of the time they don't. And so we adopted a policy, or you all adopted a policy, to allow, instead of reaching out to our waiting list on those, filling those through coordinated entry. And that has a system of prioritizing people that have the highest need or at the top of the list. But in terms of whether they can fill project-based voucher units, I mean, they do currently. I mean, some of those developments are filled through coordinated entry. I'll give you an example that's not filled through coordinated entry. We have a project in Minnetonka that has some project-based vouchers in it that serve females with brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries. They're not prioritized on coordinated entry, and likely are not on our waiting list. So we get direct referrals for those units, for example, and they're not on coordinated entry.
Thank you. And I guess I'm just wondering if we are getting a surge, and I think, was it 200 or 300, or correct me if I'm wrong, but at those, so I'm just wondering if that in the future, as they come in, because there's more constraints around how they are allocated, if that could eventually help our project-based voucher. It's more about looking forward and with that push from the feds under the Biden administration trying to help, right? So I'm trying to find, is there a stronger tie to the project-based vouchers projects as we go forward? And then just last but not least, Terry asked too, if you could just provide us, so of the people on the waiting list, which is just, again, when we all know it's just horrible, you just get on a waiting list and you may or may not get called for a voucher in the time frame you need one, which is horrible. And you wait forever. But how many, so once a person finally is lucky enough to advance, but how many actually come back that can't find a place? That's the other struggle. And the reason I'm asking that is, again, it's just, robbing Peter to pay Paul, or in this difficult situation, how do you choose which direction? So you have to kind of go both directions, right? To solve as much as you can while you can. But for me, I just do appreciate when projects come forward that are going to be forever affordable, and they're not competing in a hot market right now where investors may come in and bump out and decide, yeah, we're not going to be affordable anymore when the contract ends or whenever they can escape it, right? Or there's so much competition out there that people just can't land the voucher where they need it to. So that's where I struggle, is like, if we get such a high number coming back that just seem to circle and funnel, how do we manage that when we know we've got a pipeline of projects that want to get in the ground and make permanency for people? That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me ask my questions.
Yeah, thanks. And Ms. Smith, did you have a response there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson. I'll answer your question first about the emergency housing vouchers. And this item will be coming to you at one of our upcoming meetings very soon for your approval on that program. But we're getting 218 emergency housing vouchers from HUD. These are new vouchers that are coming out of the American Rescue Plan, and need to serve people people that are experiencing homelessness, at risk of homelessness, fleeing domestic violence, experiencing domestic violence. And all of these vouchers need to be filled through coordinated entry. So it's people that are prioritized on coordinated entry will receive priority for these vouchers. So we've developed partnerships with the counties and the county continuums of care. We operate in 3 continuum of care areas to help prioritize those vouchers. And then with providing vouchers, I think the difference between project-based vouchers and housing choice vouchers, with housing choice voucher, the purpose of the program is it provides the family with choice in terms of where they want to live. And with a project-based voucher, tenants don't, well, at least for the first year, they don't really have that choice, because they get, here's the one unit we have available. If it's in St. Francis or Woodbury or Shakopee, wherever it may be, here's the unit, and you have to move there in order to receive the assistance. I'll give you an example of a development we brought on. We put some project-based vouchers in a Woodbury development, and we had some homeless veteran vouchers put there through the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program. They couldn't fill the units because nobody wanted to move to that suburban location. They wanted to be closer to the core. So we had to transition those units and remove those VASH project-based vouchers from that development because they couldn't fill them. So having units available, yes, it does provide permanent units in good locations, but it's not a perfect scenario because the family who's at the top of whatever list has to want to move there. I mean, we have units in St. Francis, Plymouth, Woodbury, Eden Prairie, so all over the place. And so it doesn't provide the choice that the Housing Choice Voucher Program is intended to provide. And then I think you had a question on the success rates of voucher holders. So our success rates dipped down to 45% back in 2014 when the market was really, really tough, meaning 55% of our vouchers came back. We're up to 62% now. So 62% of families and individuals that get vouchers are able to place them. We have more staffing capacity than we've ever had for housing search assistance. So I expect that those numbers are going to creep up again. The market is starting to change. So the market is starting to soften. The vacancy rates are rising a little bit, which makes it a better market for tenants with voucher holders. And there are many regional initiatives that are working with landlords and on voucher acceptance, not through us, but through Housing Link and Family Housing Fund, really doing a lot of work to recruit landlords for the program. So yes, it's a real thing, but it's not as simple as here's a unit, it's filled and lickety split, because that's not how it happens on the ground.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Further questions from committee members before we turn to the public comment? Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Terry. Excellent presentation. Thinking about the burden that your staff are going through, a couple of questions come to mind. Number one, regarding the PBVs, yes, not easy to say. Have you considered adding additional consultants to help with things like Davis-Bacon review or environmental review? I know some things you need to do in-house, but it seems like other things you might be able to farm out. And then I have a couple of follow-up questions as well.
Smith.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Lindstrom, yes. And sometimes we are lucky that another partner does that work for us. Like if Hennepin County has some money in the project as well, maybe they do the Davis-Bacon. We have subsidy layering review, often, is sometimes done by HUD, sometimes Minnesota Housing, sometimes one of the counties. It's coordinating all those pieces together, and we can contract it out, but it still costs money, right? I mean, I think of the intense time it takes to monitor Davis-Bacon. It's a good thing because it ensures people are getting paid livable wages. But it is incredibly time intensive, and to contract that out, it costs money, and we don't get extra money from HUD for doing those things.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Terry, you talked about the administrative burden around porting in new folks, and I'm wondering about moving to work. Does that help with that? Or is that, I know the whole idea of that of moving to work was to kind of lower the burdens, but does it lower our burdens or just the folks receiving the voucher, or both? Is that helpful or not? Not really. Is my question.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Lindstrom, you're right on. The Moving to Work program provides us with the ability to waive certain regulations and make our programs more efficient. One of the things we're doing right now in partnership with Minneapolis is waiving the portability for certain vouchers. And it gets quite complicated, so I won't go into the details, but it means we're operating some vouchers in Minneapolis just for ease of administrative burden, and we're going to be doing more of that. If we get moving to work regulation, I mean, there has to be agreement with the other housing authorities, but like Minneapolis and Metro HRA, because we're partnering on the moving to work, we can waive the portability line. So we operate our vouchers, whether they live in Minneapolis or the suburbs. They operate their vouchers, whether they live in Minneapolis or the suburbs. That's not approved yet. I mean, it has to be part of our moving to work plan, but it reduces the artificial jurisdictional lines. It eases the burden for families and individuals and landlords that are working across jurisdictional lines, and it's easier for staff. So you're right on.
Sounds like a win-win all the way around. My last question, Mr. Chair, is trying to get a solid understanding of what will be put off or delayed if we did head in the direction of project-based vouchers. You talked about the waiting list admissions. Are there other things on the work plan that we'll need to set aside or not concentrate as much now, or maybe get to later?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Lindstrom, our work plan is quite lengthy, but one of the things on there is figuring out moving to work and how to get that designation. That federal designation is incredibly time consuming. It's lots and lots of meetings with federal partners, with local partners, and it's quite complicated because the partnership that we're adopting or working towards with Minneapolis hasn't been done anywhere in the country. So it takes creativity, it takes time from lawyers, it takes a lot of my time, a lot of our leadership team time and staff time. We have, research home ownership program. Should we be taking advantage of a home ownership program? So where you would take some of our vouchers and dedicate them to home ownership instead of rental. It's time consuming to put those programs into place, but I think it's worth looking at with all the disparities in home ownership. So those are just two examples, and it's, push and pull, and we'll have to figure out where we prioritize. But I think most importantly, it's the people on the waiting list that will not get served for another year with our limited capacity. And I meant to comment on this in my presentation, but we did receive 85 comments on this item tonight. The majority of those, I think all but maybe 3, are from Beacon Interfaith Collaborative of one sort and affiliates of that development organization. But we did get 2 from other folks, and one of them is a concern, a list of concern, of written comments on the concern and the number of people that are looking for affordable housing and trying to get on waiting lists for years and years and years and years, and they can't. And then when they get on the list, if they never get served, then they're still waiting years and years. So it's become a real problem if we get to a point where someone has to become homeless before they get a voucher. And so I think it's worth mentioning that.
Thank you, Ms. Councilmember Lindstrom. Anything further?
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from committee members before we turn to public comment? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, just real briefly, we have to put the folks that are on the waiting list as a priority and look at how we can shift more people off of the waiting list. If there's a person that already has a voucher and we're giving them priority of choice and they've utilized the services for a number of time and they're holding on to that benefit, which I understand, but you have to weigh that against those folks that are on the waiting list. I think you mentioned if we asked the people on the waiting list what their response would be, it would be different, So that's why I'm glad we're having the public comments. And as we are looking at opportunities to change things or make things more equitable, I'm always going to be in favor of getting people off of this waiting list for so long and preventing homelessness.
Thank you, Councilmember. Committee members, anything else before we turn to the public comment? Committee members. Oh, Councilmember Johnson.
Just briefly, I really appreciate my fellow council members' questions, and Councilmember Chambliss, I'm right there with you. However, people are finding themselves in jeopardy of lack of housing or becoming homeless. I think the part that frustrates me the most is the rules and regulations and how you get into a project-based, building versus how you can find something that might be out in the market where a landlord or owner is willing to take vouchers in, and all the effort that's going behind it. And, at the end of the day, we don't have enough units. And that's why I'm trying to figure out, how, when you've got a pipeline of developers ready to go to build units that will forever and ever be affordable and available, how do we get more units built that we can know for certain will be there and supplement what the market may be willing to do? And regulations seem to, be problematic in that. But I'd like, when we do hear from the developers or whoever's presenting tonight, I'd like to hear how their project can impact that list, because I agree it's mind-blowing and terribly challenging for people to have to live under those constraints. And especially, I know we do have vouchers that are designated for homeless people, and I believe vouchers like that go to project-based voucher developments. We'll hear later if that's the case, but I just want to thank you for the comments, because it just speaks to the big challenge that we have and how difficult this whole issue is, and commending our staff for being right in the middle of it. I don't know how they do it every day. And a big shout out to the developers who are also, pushing rope uphill every day And then the mudslide comes and they get out, the sun comes out and they push the rope back uphill every day so that they can get in ground and build those. So I just want to thank everybody for your comments.
Thank you, Councilmember. And with that, let's turn to the public comment portion. And I really want to thank folks for being here, for hanging in. Look forward to hearing from you. Anyone who wishes will be allowed to provide comments and as guidelines to accommodate all individuals. If you can keep your individual comments in the 3-minute range, representatives of the organizations, if you're speaking on behalf of your organization, if you're the sole spokesperson, 5 minutes. We'll start with the pre-registered list. I have 5, and I'll read those all out so you know what order you'll be speaking in. And after that list, then I'll ask for those who have not signed up to speak. When you speak, please state your name, your place of residence, and if applicable, the organization you represent. We'll also accept written statements in addition to oral comments. We encourage people to engage. And so with that, I will go to my list and I'll read through the whole list of people that have signed up. And it's amazing how many old friends I have on this list. So first will be Lee Blondes, next Justin Lewandowski, third will be Deanna Nealand, fourth, Tom Francis, and fifth on the sign up list is Leslie Vermillion. And then I'll ask if any others would like to speak. So from Beacon Interfaith Housing, first it's Lee Blondes. Welcome, Lee. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm Lee Blondes, and I'm the CEO of Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. We approached the Met Council about 1.5 years ago about your ability to drive suburban and ex-urban, deeply affordable and supportive housing in the community. We were really grateful for your issuing an RFP last year. We want to thank you. You helped us get our Vista 44 funded and our Cranberry Ridge just broke ground this last month in the city of Plymouth with now 10 more deeply affordable homes because of your support. We felt like it was extraordinarily successful. You had 321 homes proposed for deeply affordable housing at or below 30% AMI, which is one of the greatest challenges to make happen anywhere in the region. And so you have organizations that want to partner with you. 85 of those homes were funded through Minnesota Housing and are moving forward. And as we've mentioned earlier, there was the RFP did say up to 200. We are asking you to make those available and to make those available this year. As the information that Terry Smith showed, you have made vouchers available either directly through your RFP like you did last year or through Minnesota Housing for the last 7 years. So it is a radical decision for you to decide to withdraw your participation with your partners because you impact every community that Minnesota Housing operates in, and you will stop some developments from moving forward. And so I do understand the challenges with the wait list, and I do understand you have a challenging decision to weigh these very limited resources. So I do want to just bring to your attention, we are not just a housing developer. We advocate for public policy like we're doing today at the state legislature. And Beacon is leading an effort called Bring It Home Minnesota to make rent subsidy available to every single Minnesotan that needs it. And we have we've successfully had hearings held at the legislature on this. And we've actually worked with NARO, your trade association, to testify about your own wait list. So we want you to know we share deeply the concern around community need. And so we are here not just with a developer hat on, but one about community need. We have not come to you just asking for our projects to be funded, but for you to invest in this ongoing process. So we do hope you will do an RFP every year. We hope you would take it on to do it yourself because it helps drive that process. But we do ask that you make a simple decision for this year. If you're not ready to make that permanent decision, that you make up to 111 vouchers available through either your own RFP or through Minnesota Housing. We only need 42 vouchers for what we're doing, but we hope that you will still make that decision this year. And for that, I really ask you to put a different hat on and not focus just on this one resource, but really your role as a regional planning organization. We want to thank you for your leadership in the 2040 plan. You have explicitly asked all communities to name the number of homes they're going to create affordable at 30% AMI. That has taken extraordinary leadership. You have been a key leader in changing the conversation around affordable housing across the region. So you now have a different problem to solve than you had before. City councilors are no longer resisting affordable housing, but they're clamoring now for the resources to make that affordable housing happen. So I ask you, are you willing to put your own resources into making your 2040 goals happen? Housing cannot be developed that is affordable at 30% AMI without rent subsidy. It's just a fact. You control almost all of the federal rent subsidy available outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Your partners in affordable housing need you. Let me speak explicitly to Prairie Point. We have spent close to 5 years building up support for this deeply affordable and supportive housing in Scott County. It's a conservative region. The city of Shakopee has approved land use for Prairie Point despite neighborhood opposition. Scott County has approved their first ever capital investment in housing. Prairie Point is an innovative and supportive housing development that will also not only serve homeless families, but also families in the child welfare system in collaboration with Scott and Carver counties. We've been awarded a national grant to work collaboratively on a service design to change the racial disparities in the removal of children from Black, Indigenous, and families of color. The city of Shakopee, under their 2040 plan, has agreed to the Met Council goal to produce 548 new homes affordable at 30% AMI by 2030, an average of 55 homes a year. What do you say to Shakopee about meeting their goals when they ask you for resources that you have, but you decline to make this project viable? As you know, this plays into the criticism of the Met Council that you create mandates with no resources. Meeting your 2040 plan requires systems change within housing finance. When you distribute your capital funding later this year, we challenge you to distribute your capital funding to match your own 2040 goals. Without PVVs available to developers, we can predict that almost all of your capital funding will focus at housing at 50% AMI or higher. Lofty goals that call for hundreds of new homes at 30% AMI throughout the region. So I can tell you how it plays out for us on the ground. We have 2 family supportive housing developments, one in Minneapolis and one in Shakopee. Both are desperately needed. Both will serve predominantly families of color. But we can predict today that because MPHA has already awarded us vouchers for our development, our proposed development in Minneapolis, that it will be most likely funded by Minnesota Housing. But without project-based vouchers from you, the one in Shakopee will not. So let me be clear, the barrier to creating deeply affordable and supportive housing in Shakopee and Scott County will not be neighborhood opposition. It will not be the city, it will not be the county, and it will not be the state. It will be the lack of funding from the Met Council. The world is changing around you. What an irony if the burden has shifted from Met Council convincing cities to embrace affordable housing to having cities trying to get the Met Council to embrace deeply affordable housing developments. We ask you to step into your leadership with your resources. We understand they are scarce. We are not asking that all vouchers go into project-based. We're just asking that a portion of them do it. We are here as one of your key vehicles to help you realize your 2040 goals. We can partner together to make the system change necessary. Ensuring fair and accessible housing to overcome racial discrimination in Scott County is huge. Partnering to overcome racial disparities in the child welfare system through Prairie Point with Scott County is revolutionary. Please don't put brakes on this important project. We hope that you will act today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for your comments and for your work and your passion for your work. And I'll continue moving through the list just for a sort of a point of reference. That was about 8 minutes. So, so just to get in the interest of making sure we have time for everyone. 5 minutes if you're the sole representative of an organization, please. 3 minutes if you're speaking for yourself. And next on the list is also from Beacon, Justin Lewandowski. Justin, welcome. Or Mr. Lewandowski.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. I was having some tech issues earlier, and Chair Lilligren, council members, I just wanted to make you aware that Deanna wasn't able to be here tonight due to a family emergency, and she requested that I actually read her portion tonight, and would love to get approval to make sure that that is an option. Deanna is actually a resident who lives in a project-based home.
Yes, please, Mr. Lewandowski. And I should have said this with you too, Lee. If you'd also identify yourself by name and address, please. And
yeah, great.
But with Ms. Nealon's comments too.
Well, I wanted to be clear too that I'm speaking today as a public resident, and I do work at Beacon, but I got to work alongside so many wonderful members of the Met Council region. And so today I'm speaking as a private individual. My name is Justin Lewandowski. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, 1217 Hubbard Avenue, beautiful place. And today I'm speaking because the public engagement plan of the Metropolitan Council defines engagement as the act of intentionally organizing individuals, communities, constituencies, and organizations to help inform the council that residents and communities are partners in decision-making. So I actually started following Beacon because, like the Met Council, they also share those values of organizing individuals, congregations, and communities. So as Lee said, beyond organizing for our homes that we develop, our collaborative of 100 congregations also focuses on policy work. And like Lee said, every level of government, from cities, counties, regions, and across the state legislature. So we really work hard to ensure that people's voices, got a cat here. We work hard to ensure that people's voices are heard in public spaces, which are often difficult to maneuver or are largely inaccessible, especially to those most impacted by racial and economic justice. Equity is actually named as a core principle of the Met Council's public engagement plan, that residents and communities are partners in decision-making. As a resident of St. Paul, organizing alongside fellow community members across the metro region, this hasn't been our experience, especially around this urgent conversation that you've heard today. January 4th, we found out that our project-based request would not move forward, and that we would be notified of another opportunity to apply for project-based vouchers. So we reached out early to get clarity on timelines, specific processes, other opportunities to engage the committee, and how do you all take formal action? We really wanted to figure that out. However, we were told that there was no reason to have that conversation at the time because there wouldn't be any new details or information on the vouchers until after that March 1st informational meeting you all had. We were told that we'd have an opportunity to make our case after that. 3 business days after that meeting, we were informed that a final decision was made not to offer any PBVs in 2021. So as you can tell, we were pretty caught off guard, and I know y'all have been hearing from us. We continue to have conversations about our position. We tried multiple times to secure an opportunity to informally address the committee through the process that's described on your website. On May 17th, there was a motion approved to put this conversation on tonight's agenda with public input and as a business item, which would result in formal action. However, this conversation, again, isn't a business item, and public comment instructions were only made available 3 days ago. With little instruction on the public website on how to do that. So I'm glad that our leaders were able to submit those 85 emails and that we've got over 80 folks from 32 congregations registered to watch this meeting tonight. But I gotta say, I absolutely agree with Terry. The folks on the waiting list should be here. Their voices should be heard, which is exactly why I'm lifting up the lack of open and transparent outreach and execution of the Met Council's public engagement plan. If we had a hard time with this, I can't imagine what it would be like for those folks on the waiting list. But I want to be crystal clear. I am not laying out these experiences of our leaders to cast blame or wag a finger. The staff of this committee are absolutely outstanding. In fact, Your staff are so good, you should hire more of them. These conversations are incredibly important. They deserve to be informed by the brilliance and expertise of your dedicated staff, as well as through clear processes outlined in the council's public engagement plan, so that people feel heard and that their input matters. There should be enough human bandwidth to do both of these. So I believe that the expertise of the staff and that the Met Council's engagement plan can work in tandem to maximize our capacity to live our shared values of equity and inclusion into the world. So I know I've gone over probably my time, but I needed to say that no matter what happens with project-based vouchers this year, I just want you all to know that we are still very eager to be public partners in the long run. Beacon's congregations, leaders, community members, like the Met Council, we share the principle and the value of collaboration. Developing relationships, dialogue, and understanding the value residents and communities bring into this often difficult process. Thank you so much for letting us feel heard tonight. Thank you for all of your hard work and dedication, and I sincerely look forward to our continued collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Lewandowski. And did you have something from Ms. Neeland as well, or were those
I
incorporated?
do. I don't have Deanna's address, but I can make sure that that gets sent along for the public record.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
It's a fairly quick statement, but I wanted to make sure that Deanna's voice was heard as a resident in a project-based home and how it influenced her life.
Thank you.
Good evening, committee. My name is Deanna Neeland. I would love to share my personal story with project-based vouchers. For me, the housing assistance was truly a weight lifted off of my shoulders after being homeless with my 5 children and my elderly mother for a year. We were in Beacon shelter for 7 months of that year, looking for a place to call home. But finding a home that was affordable was far from my reach. We tried to locate affordable housing with no luck. We then found my current home at Cloverfield Marketplace in Chaska. We have been there for 3 years because the unit has a project-based voucher. Let me tell you how much easier the transition from homelessness to a tenant was with that voucher. I wasn't worried about paying next month's rent because I could afford it. It was truly a relief moving into a home with rental assistance. Life is easier with no worries about rent. Not having to be worried about rent has allowed me to go back to school to pursue my dreams. I hope we can get more project-based homes so other families get to experience the joyful relief of being in a home to create new beginnings. So on behalf of Deanna, thank you for listening to her testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Lewandowski, for sharing that. Going back to the list of those who have signed in to speak, next is Mr. Tom Francis. Mr. Francis, thanks for being.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, yes. Welcome, Mr. Francis.
Good afternoon, Chair Littlegren and council members. My name's Tom Francis. I live about 4 miles east of Jordan in a rural area. I'm a member of Hope Lutheran Church in Jordan. I'm one of dozens of active leaders in Scott and Carver counties that have tirelessly offered their time and resources to help low-income families find housing in the Southwest metro area. Each leader has their own reasons for devoting as much time to this process. Mine is that I have witnessed the destruction of families due to homelessness as a former foster parent and because my brother was homeless for more than 20 years. My fellow leaders and I partnered with and became advocates for Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. Beacon promotes and builds supportive housing that has proven to be the most effective method in ending the cycles of homelessness. It helps families by providing needed support and getting them where they can become self-sustaining. 4 years ago, we began a long process to build supportive housing that would serve 42 families in Scott and Carver counties called Prairie Point. We encountered hurdle after hurdle, including finding a building site, preparing a preliminary plan, obtaining site zoning and land use, engaging Shakopee residents, getting approval from Shakopee City Council, and securing a historic, first of its kind, $900,000 capital commitment from Scott County. We have overcome so much, but right now our biggest roadblock is project-based vouchers. Supportive housing developments that serve lowest income households with histories of homelessness are not financially feasible without rental assistance. That is why we hope that you would reconsider opening an RFP for 115 project-based vouchers, or at least make them available through the Minnesota Housing RFP, so Beacon and other developers have a fighting chance. We've offered opportunities for public input, develop partnerships with cities and counties, and also like to be partners with the Met Council to provide housing for low-income families that are struggling to stay together. Will you partner with us to provide a path to make PVBs available in 2021 and support an annual transparent process for awarding project-based vouchers in the future? Thank you, Chair Lilligren and council members, for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Francis, for your work on behalf of the community and for attending tonight and your comments. And you were pretty much 3 minutes on the nose, so congratulations on that as well. And thank you for being here. Returning to the list, the last person I have signed in, and then I'll ask if there are others who would like to speak, is Leslie Vermillion. Welcome, Ms. Vermillion.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Long time no see.
It
here.
has been a while. Good to see you.
Yeah, so, well, thank you for the chance to speak tonight. And I do want to talk in support of these project-based vouchers. We have been in these discussions, I think, as you've learned now, for about 5 years with Beacon. They have really listened to the county board. I think there's been a big change in some of the attitude in the county and things that we need to do out there. This is the only project. We're having discussions on trust land for workforce housing and reentry housing using things Highway has done. So we're trying to get creative, but they really did listen to us on this project and the flexibility that it provided for families experiencing homelessness, as well as those with a disability and families involved in our child welfare system. That 2020 rent subsidy commitment, I will say that you provided, I think was a key to the county board moving forward this $900,000 capital investment. And that is the first time they have moved something like that forward. But there is a significant gap, I think, in Scott County for the supportive housing. 85% of our low-income rental households in Scott County are cost burdened. We have an estimated gap of about 1,140 housing units for extremely low-income households. We've been working on a county-wide housing plan through SCALE, which is our Association for Leadership and Efficiencies, working with the cities on this. And 83% of our unstable households, they are unable to move within 90 days to a stable living area. So this is truly a public-private, I think, partnership that was designed to remove some of these barriers. It puts more units into production, which I think Councilmember Johnson made a really important point on. It provides also on-site services that the county has been in discussions with Beacon about. We are proactive and focused on meeting some of these needs, I think, and especially our most vulnerable residents and our children. Heavy focus there. We think they have a very meaningful impact on the entire region. This is kind of that two-generational approach that our board has been focused on. It was another reason they were very interested in this and breaking the cycle of homelessness, really trying to focus on outcomes for our children. The based rental, these project-based rental subsidies, they're critical, I think, to be moving this forward. You know, Chairman, I came from the highway world and I thought putting interchange and projects was difficult together, but I have learned the chicken and the egg here in the state and the Met Council and how do you get one without the other. So I think this is a really important discussion. And then low income tenants, they're continually challenged to find these units that they can rent in Scott County. So I think it's critical that we get more units actually in the ground out there. And so we're here just to be supportive and hopeful that you would move forward this process again for these types of vouchers to help move projects like Prairie Point forward. And I should have stated my name and address, but I'm Leslie Vermillion. I'm the county administrator for Scott County. And our address is 200 4th Avenue West, Shakopee, Minnesota.
Thank you, Leslie, for your work and for your comments today. And it's good to see you. It has been a while. We were around a lot of transportation tables together back in the day.
That's right.
So congratulations on your advancing career. That's all I have on the list. So now I would ask, it looks like there may be a few other people who are here to address us tonight. And so I would ask if any other members of the public are here to address us, please speak up. I can't always see everyone on WebEx, so if I'm not seeing you, please speak up. Anyone? Anyone? Right, again, thank you, all of you, for taking the time to share your thoughts today and for the work that you do. I mean, it's so inspiring to hear. And we has also received comments by email as well, as was noted. We'll collect these comments, prepare a summary of comments. This is not an action item for tonight, and so we won't be taking a vote. But we are hearing you, and as we update our housing choice voucher administrative plan, you will have impact on that, is my guess. And we'll have the full council will have the opportunity to review these comments prior to any further action, council action on the plan. So again, my thanks. And with that, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the members of this committee allowing us to have this opportunity. I think it's really important and appreciate all of the comments that were made tonight on behalf of our staff, the committee members, and the public. A few huge takeaways. Number one, Justin, I grew up at 1302 Hubbard Avenue, so shout out to the Hubbard crowd. Very cool. Also, just to the point that's made, and this might seem, I don't know, but as a city official for over 20 years, who I have experienced housing insecurity. I was a single mother. I was on welfare. I had food stamps. I know how hard it was to work a job, have to quit your college education, raise a child on your own. And that was when you didn't even have credit checks and you could pay cash for places to live. And it wasn't so hard to find an apartment, and it was still extremely hard. And so in today's world, I don't know how families balance that. I mean, it's like having two full-time jobs just trying to live your life and make ends meet, and it's still not happening. And now we're coming through and out of a pandemic where the numbers are going to skyrocket once the moratoriums are lifted. We know that. So here's what we know. The 2040 plans ask cities to produce enough affordable housing to meet our 2040 goals across the region. And yes, I would say there was a time where cities weren't leaning into this. They weren't proactive. The naysayers and the not in my backyarders were loud and proud. But I will also say, having witnessed 20 years of working in this area, it's true what was said tonight by the testifiers. Now cities are leaning in and coming up with creative ways. Look at, as an example tonight, the city of Edina and what they're trying to do. They're throughout this whole region. And so now, in order to meet the 2040 goals that we've got set, we all know that the funding and the tools can't get the job done. And we find ourselves in the bullseye of the target, trying to figure out how to disperse our own resources to these all worthy projects and people on lists. So with that said, I just want to say, I hear it all the time. If cities would only work to provide more affordable housing, if cities would approve the projects and not be afraid of bringing people into their communities that are at 30% or below AMI, or even 50 or 80% AMI, working people, right? I mean, in my community, in my district, but in Plymouth, we lost a project because I couldn't get the funding. Worked for years on getting it through, and it fell apart. And it wasn't a 30% AMI. And so all I'm saying is, we are in a struggle here, and I don't know how we come out of this, but we've got partners out there. There is pipeline, and there are developments that are on, I used to say, on life support. You worked hard on these to get them through because you were threading, a needle from 100 miles away, and you knew you had to do it because people depended on you. So if we continue to move forward with project-based vouchers, let's try to build the program in advance where, we can help set expectations, build in the public input, work to meet the goals across the region, and open those doors permanently for people who hopefully are already on our waiting list and can come off because they're getting a project-based voucher home. I'll tell you, doesn't matter if you're homeless, if somebody's offering you a home, if it's in a suburb or urban core or near suburb, it's a home for your kids. And I don't think people are too picky at that point. And it's a godsend that people are out there with supportive housing too, right? It's got the stuff that families need to get up on their feet every day, and they're not on their own with a simple rent subsidy. So you can tell I'm very passionate, just like all of you, and it tears my heart because I want to be able to do more. And so I just appreciate everybody's patience because I want all of these developments to be successful, every single one of them. Otherwise, we might as well, and I'm being flip, I don't mean this, but I mean, why have a plan if we can't follow it? Why put the pressure and tell everybody to get the plans approved if on the backside they go through all that and then we can't meet the needs? So again, very grateful to serve with all of you. Really honor everybody because we're all in this together and we'll have to keep working to figure it out.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for your words, for your passion, for sure, and for being such a great colleague. And again, I want to thank you, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Bento, especially for spearheading this conversation tonight. Committee members, anything else? Anything? Again, my thanks for so many members of the public coming, speaking to us. It enhances this work. It doesn't happen as much here at the Met Council as maybe it does when we serve in municipal bodies. And so it's just been really an honor to hear from you tonight. And seeing no further business before this committee, we're adjourned. Good night, everyone, and thank you.